What is up, everyone? I'm William with NGEN-PCs, and today I'm sitting next to our Zen Tower build, which we premiered at QuakeCon 2019. Now, this is the world's first open waterfall computer, and as far as we can tell, it's also the world's first radiatorless water-cooled build. Now, it's been sitting in its crate ever since QuakeCon, and I figured now is as good a time as any to take this out, finish this project, and showcase it to you all. Now, before we dive in, I really wanted to say thank you to everyone at QuakeCon 2019 that stopped by to see this computer, to take photos of it, to share, to talk to us about it. This has been my favorite computer I have literally ever built, and seeing everyone's reactions to it just made it so real and really kind of set that in and let it sink in, and it meant the absolute world to me. So truly, thank you. Now, this video is really going to be an FAQ. It's really to summarize a lot of the questions that I received in person from QuakeCon and a lot of the things that I was seeing on internet as it was shared around. Now, a build this kind of extravagant and honestly just kind of stupid is going to receive a ton of flack left and right in all different forms. So really, this is to address those who are really interested in how it works and want to know more about this computer. In the simplest of forms, this is a water-cooled build, except we've replaced the radiator with this beautiful Zen Tower, which is 92 pounds of aluminum. So it's acting as the heat sink for this entire build. Now, the computer, of course, sits in the basin down here, which is its reservoir. It is drawn up, pumped through the GPU, CPU, then meets up top here. Once it meets up here, it is dispersed. Water flows down every single spire you see here, which of course is then transferring the heat that it picks up to the aluminum itself. As it equalizes temperature with the reservoir down below, it also draws up heat in that regard. Now, there are 3 EK Vardar fans sitting up top. They're blowing down through the case, so that helps cool some of the air-cooled elements that you have kind of your components on the inside here. It's also blowing air on the back side of these spires, which is helping getting rid of some of that heat. And probably the most important of all, it forces air across this massive surface area of water that we have down here below. No, it is literally distilled water, and it is as dumb as it sounds. I mean, this can literally just one splash of it short out the build that you see in the inside. There's kind of a beauty in the fragility of this whole thing. I mean, this is like a 200-pound behemoth, but just one wrong splash in the wrong area can take the whole thing down. And I didn't feel like mineral oil, it kind of just took the fun out of it, to be honest, because it kind of made it safe, but at the same time, it wouldn't rain down and coat this the way I wanted to and give it that Zen-like waterfall experience. The way it sits next to me right now, I have exactly 9 gallons of distilled water in here. And you can see I haven't filled it up all the way to the top. I didn't really want to risk that since it's in my living room and I have some cats running around here. If you filled it up to the top, it is about 10 gallons. And if you tried to fill it up to get that surface tension to give you like a cool infinity edge effect, it's about 11 gallons before it starts overflowing. So fun fact, if you tried to replace this with cryofuel, which we thought about originally, well, 10 gallons is almost 38 liters. It's like 37.85 liters, I think. So we'll say 38 liters, and you need a single bottle of concentrate per liter. So that means that you need 38 bottles of cryofuel at $10 USD a pop. So you would need $380 worth of cryofuel just to fill and run this computer. To explain the loop, I'll start with the pump itself. So we're using a submersible pond pump, and it's 4,500 liters per hour. A standard D5 is 1,500 liters per hour, so this is 3 times more powerful than your standard D5 you would find in a water-cooled build, which makes me really glad I didn't go for the D5 route. I wanted to use as many like standard water cooling components as I could, so it didn't kind of look like cheating in a say, or people would say it wasn't like water-cooled. But you'd have to have a priming sequence because the reservoir is below the pumps. After designing it, it just got really complicated and really expensive. This pond pump was 30 bucks. So not only was it cheaper, it actually works better because I can just flip a switch. I don't have to prime it or anything. Forces water up, good to go. The benefit of it as well is it really cleaned up the lines in here and it made the concept really easy to understand as people approached and looked at this. Basically, there's water in the bottom, gets forced up, comes out from the top. So specifically with how this pump is working, it has a G3 force fitting on the end, which I have adapted to dual G 1/4 fitting, so your standard and your water cooling loop. And I did that because I wanted as much volume of water as you can get up top, because I didn't think that one single path would be enough water to flow down over all this. So I'm really glad I did that, because this is actually running at 100% right now. So it is running theoretically at its 4,500 liters per hour, or close to it after all the resistance comes into play. And I still only have, this kind of relatively low amount of water inside here. So they flow up. There's one that goes to the GPU, one to the CPU, so essentially two loops kind of coming up. They meet in the middle up here in this U shape. They literally collide. And once they collide, it forces water out to each spire that you see here. Every single spire has a ball valve, which I know is rudimentary for like a pressure control system. You're not really supposed to use ball valves, but since it's low pressure, it works really well and serves its purpose. Each spire then has a T-fitting, which leads to each edge and beginning right here. And the reason I did that was so I could replace these shower heads. So I can adjust the nozzles and jets independently without having to redo this whole kind of central area here, which is why this looks so crazy complex and convoluted, but it's easily like my favorite part of that. And then of course from there, it rains out from the shower head. Each one is tailored to the spire that it's on, and the number of jets and the placement of jets is tailored so water flows down smoothly. One big thing that has to happen is water has to catch in this channel. If it were to drip over the edge, hits the section, splatters, and then splashes and coats everything, which again could cause a short. So to prevent that splashing, we have to catch it when it runs down. So the jets do shoot onto this, and then of course it stays on there just via surface tension, hits this, flows down, and by the time it gets to the bottom here, any splashes, if there are, which there really aren't any splashes, are super minor and they're away from the computer, keeping it safe. Some of the more astute observers notice that we're not using the VRM block on the motherboard, and almost all those that noticed that we're not using that block realized why, and that has to do with galvanic corrosion. If you haven't figured it out, this is a fully aluminum loop. And so if we had any dissimilar metal, such as copper in the loop, it would really intensify that galvanic corrosion process. And because this is an open loop, that distilled water, as it picks up all that debris, like dust, hair that comes into it, is going to become a really strong electrolyte. So to explicitly answer that question, we're not using the VRM block because it's copper, and we have to stick to an all aluminum loop. If you notice in this version of the build, if you actually saw the QuakeCon version, I do have a RAM block as well. I'll be utilizing both of those blocks when I actually convert this to a closed loop system. Now this also gave me a good excuse to use EK's Fluid Gaming lineup. I've always loved their aluminum gaming lineup, and particularly this 1000 series GPU block. To me, it's the best looking block they've ever made. And given the fact that it's aluminum and I was able to polish it to match the Z Tower, that was just icing on the cake, and I was so happy I was finally able to use that. And to me, that's also one of the best parts about this build besides me. There's so many things that had to be in harmony to make this work. I mean, the Z Tower is aluminum, which means we can actually set it in water and it's not going to rust. And then on top of that, EK makes an aluminum gaming lineup. If we didn't have that lineup, we wouldn't be able to utilize and make that into a water loop. So it kind of adds that kind of beauty to the whole system. Specs, they're really nothing crazy. And in fact, we really skimped on the GPU. Like I said, I really wanted to use the 1000 series Fluid Gaming lineup because to me it's the best looking block that they've had, and I could polish it to match the Z Tower, even though the 2000 series was readily available at this time. And at this point, I'd like to add that this is not a sponsored project in any way. So this was funded by NGEN-PCs, mainly through Jake, to get this off the ground. And if we were going to destroy the components in here, because we have open water, distilled water flowing around this, I didn't want to kill a 1080 Ti, so we put a GTX 1060 in here. Now I did want the modern motherboard aesthetics, so we did get a really nice Maximus 11 formula, and I've got a 9700K processor, so again, not like top tier 9900K or anything like that. And then I've just got 32 gigs of RAM that I've blocked and put in there. So nothing crazy spec-wise. There was talks about this potentially going to CES 2020. If that were to happen, then of course this would have been a sponsored build at that point, and we would have had a 2080 Ti. Top of the line components, 9900K, maybe even switching over to Ryzen, something along those lines. Since CES didn't work out, I can now release this to you. I was kind of saving this, and the reason we hadn't posted anything about it yet was because if it was going to go to CES, I didn't really want to spoil the surprise. I kind of wanted those reactions to be really fresh like they were at QuakeCon. But now that CES has passed, I can now share this directly from us to you, and I'm ready to turn this into a closed loop system so I can actually use it, and it's going to be my living room gaming PC. Temperatures are really damn good. This is the closest to ambient of any water cooling build I've ever personally built. Albeit, I'm more about cramming a lot of things in a smaller space than I am about like putting a bunch of radiators in like a big K/case. So I'm sure there's plenty of other builds that perform on par with this, if not better. But this is the closest to ambient I've ever been. We've been running Time Spy over there for 20 hours, and I'll post screenshots of this so you can see the exact numbers. But the CPU averages about 29 degrees Celsius on average. So that's for 9700K again. And the GPU is like at 24 degrees Celsius and like just like barely peaks over that ever. And the room, if the thermostat is to be believed, is about 21 degrees Celsius. So it's really close to ambient temperatures. But we have to put some things in perspective. According to the PSU down here, we're only drawing 160 watts of power. So all things being equal, we're only dissipating 160 watts of heat, which isn't that much. If we were to put a 2080 Ti in here, it would instantly double, if not a little more. But because it's so close to ambient, and because even the deltas between like the core temp and the average temp are so low, I imagine we could put, multiple 2080 Ti's in here, no problem. Even like a Ryzen chip, even overclocked, and I think we'd be just fine. Because to keep, everything kind of in perspective that's going on here, it's all about thermal mass and just this massive amount of surface area that we have for the aluminum itself, as well as the water. And I think the water is one of the biggest aspects up here, because there's even another element that you don't really experience in a closed loop system, and that's evaporation. So as, of course, heat is dispensed, converting water into a gaseous state, that is dissipating and removing heat. So this thing is just extremely cold to the touch. I will pull out an IR camera and post some of the pictures from that so you can see kind of how the temperatures are flowing across this case. But it's super cool because everything is just blue. You can just literally see the Z Tower in like a blue color. But I've been really impressed with how this has worked temperature-wise. So the original idea for a waterfall actually came from Jake. So we had some pretty serious Case Labs cases, and we both hate the dual reservoirs that you see in almost every single large Case Labs case. It's just so hackneyed and overdone. And Jake actually thought of the idea of doing a water feature on the side. So like where the reservoirs would be some kind of like waterfall effect. And to be honest, I thought it was pretty stupid. Like, it's just kind of gimmicky. It just, water's gonna splash on the components. It's gonna be a complete pain in the ass to move around. And that's just not gonna be fun. And it's just like, whatever. It kind of really didn't do anything for me. Well, then the Z Tower came along. And so we're discussing, what do you do to a Z Tower to make it, more special, more unique? And, we're all about trying to elevate cases, like potentials to what they could be, and maybe what the lead designer was kind of going for. And we're sitting there thinking, and I'm really focusing on the flowing lines of the Z Tower. So like flowing lines, flowing water, epiphany moment, thought of the waterfall that Jake had mentioned. It's like, well, what if we do the waterfall on the Z Tower and we make the water flow on the outside of the spire so it wraps around the entire computer? And from there, things just started falling into place. So it's like, oh, well, we can finally use the EK Fluid gaming lineup because, it would require aluminum loop. And I was like, wait a minute, that thing's 92 pounds of aluminum. Maybe we can use it as the heat sink for this whole thing, and we can ditch the radiator. And when an idea like that comes along, that pieces just start falling into place, and it was something unique, something we hadn't seen. We scoured the internet, couldn't find any form of just open loop computer at all, much less one that's literally a waterfall, one that's literally wrapping around all this, one that literally I could flick water on and kill it right now. We just couldn't find it. And I couldn't even find builds that were radiatorless, like for water cooling. Yeah, sure, there's other forms of cooling that might use water, some kind of other technology to keep things cool, but utilizing a case as a heatsink was still something I hadn't seen as of, QuakeCon 2019 when we released this. And so just look at it, I don't know, it just kind of blew my mind. It became a passion project, and Jake's not one to stifle creativity, so he gave me the all clear to run wild with this, and because of which I was just able to go insane and put everything I wanted to into this without any barriers or anything like that. And I just absolutely love how it turned out, and it just listen to it. What computer sounds like this? It's so calming. It truly is that Zen kind of peaceful computer sound. And just the flowing water gives like an element of motion that you don't normally get in a computer, because all you get, of course, are maybe like fans moving. Maybe your reservoir has like a dripping feature where you can hear the water flowing in there, but this is just to the next level, and I just absolutely, I just love so much about it. I can keep going on and on about this build itself, but the Z Tower is my favorite case, so I was so happy that we found and thought of an idea that really kind of adds, in my opinion, to what the Z Tower can really be. Oh yes, we definitely had a disaster. So my original design for this wasn't so much that it was flowing with the spires, but rather it rained down the spires. And so we didn't have these guides here. And when we first turned it on, it did exactly that. It literally rained down, and the problem was water would flow down, hit this, explode. So water was everywhere. We had to scramble to turn off, power to the whole thing. And water was all over the floor, and I had to like get towels to mop it up. And I was just so heartbroken because I had been building this thing for, about 75 hours at this point of labor just to get it up to this point. And then just in a second of first turning it on, the most exciting moment, I coated everything in water, and it went from being, this great cool concept to being impossible. And I was just absolutely crushed, and just, almost just, went to bed at that point. But we had like 7 hours left before QuakeCon, something along those lines. And luckily I didn't have any power running anything. I was able to turn the pump on separately, so I didn't kill anything. We just had to let it dry. We couldn't even test this computer yet. We just had to let it dry. And I started playing with the water. I thought maybe there was too much of it, maybe there, yada yada yada, went through a bunch of different kind of steps, and finally realized that, wait a minute, catching the water and preventing it from dripping in the first place is a solution. And so we brought it to QuakeCon with literally packaging tape. So before I got kind of this kind of rubber, this kind of clear, I don't even know what material this is, but before I got this, we literally brought it to QuakeCon with packaging tape that made this thing go from this impossible project all of a sudden to a functioning thing. And thankfully, almost everyone forgave us for the silly packaging tape. And ultimately, it was dark in there, you couldn't fully tell, but we knew in our hearts it was packaging tape and wasn't complete. But it was, yeah, water got absolutely everywhere. It was very heartbreaking.
T minus 3, 2, 1.
Oh, I hear it. Cranking that speed dial up until we see water flowing. Ooh. Oh God, guys, here it goes. Oh God, guys, here it goes. Oh, it's really splashy.
Stop it, stop it, stop it.
Yes, you're right. It is completely impractical. It is not meant to be a daily rig. This is a showpiece PC. It is meant to showcase this concept that we have here, and simply to be fun and hopefully inspirational to you all, as much as it was an inspirational thing for me to build. It is completely anxiety inducing. It's a horrible daily rig. Every time I turn it on, it freaks me out because I don't know if something's going to splash or a cat's going to come up here and knock water onto it. Updating the BIOS was probably the most terrifying thing I've ever had to do, as I knew I could just break this entire thing in an instant just like that. And yes, evaporation definitely comes into play. I don't really have any exact calculated figures on this. We were at QuakeCon for 3 days, gaming for about 12 hours a day, and I would say we lost about ½ an inch of water from this basin, and with the volume calculations, it's about 3 gallons of water, so about 1 gallon per day. It seemed that we were losing. If you see videos of this at QuakeCon, you'll notice that the water level was about 1 inch below the top rim. That was simply just because people are walking by and could actually bump into it, and I didn't want it to spill over or get anything. But yes, you're right, completely impractical, not a daily rig. Cost, incredibly expensive. I'm not really one to sit there and just kind of flaunt it. You can see the case that it's in. I listed off the components. You can make your guesses as to how much this build was. In terms of selling it, technically speaking, of course, you can buy anything with money. But if I were to actually sell this, like I said, this isn't a daily rig, and this would have to be treated like an aquarium. So I'd really have to have someone that also agreed to like a service contract for this that would pay for me to come out every single month, replace the water, clean the blocks, etc. So it's not really for sale, as I don't want someone to have to deal with that if they're buying a product from us. But again, technically speaking, yeah, money can buy just about anything. So there you have it. There's our Zen Tower project. I really hope that at the end of the day, it elicited some form of response from you, either good or bad. This has been my all-time favorite project I've done for NGEN-PCs. And as always, we really appreciate the support you've given us. I know we haven't been posting a lot of content or even videos. Jake has started a full-time job with EK Water Blocks, and I've been devoting my time to another YouTube channel. So we're really going to take the time to dial NGEN-PCs back to only focus on passion projects and stop kind of seeking those sponsorships and working those grinds and just going aggressively at it. Dial it back, but rest assured, this is what a passion project looks like. And we're going to have more of these lined up. In fact, Inwin already has one in store for you that I can't wait to showcase. As for the Z Tower itself, I do have future modding plans for it, but right now I'm just going to convert it to a closed loop system that I can use here in the living room. And because silver matches this aesthetic better, I'm not going to do those mods yet, but I do have big plans in the future. As always though, thank you for watching. Take care.